Hey, it's the Bet Las Vegas Audacy Sports and the Sporting Tribune. Adrian Hernandez here, and joining us, basically a neighbor right down the street here in Vegas, Michael Lombardi, the host of the Lombardi Line on VSiN, and his podcast was, by the way, for all my football fans, if you really want to learn the game, the intricacies, the front office, I cannot recommend it enough. The GM Shuffle Pod. Michael, you are a former general manager, a three-time Super Bowl winning NFL executive, and now a guest on the show. How are you doing this offseason, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's been a great off season so far. It's been very interesting, and I think there's more things to come as we move forward. And there'll be some resolution to Aaron Rodgers, maybe Lamar Jackson.
And of course, the Raiders have been super, super active. And I just said it, it's your first time on the show. And, the one thing that fascinates me is that, of course, we love football as a country. But when you really think of it, whether it's the front office or on the field, there's so much about the game that we truly don't understand as fans unless we're seeking out your podcast, unless we're really searching this information, and can get overwhelming. So for you, and pardon the vagueness of the question I'm about to ask, but if there's one thing that you can point to that you think fans have a misconception when it comes to a front office and making decisions and making moves during free agency, what would it be?
I think name power. I think that people fall in love. Tony Soprano talks about remember when being the lowest form of conversation. And I think fans get caught up in remembering when players were really good and they think they're always good. And name power carries a lot of weight in free agency. Russell Wilson, last year he rushed in Seattle for 183 yards. The national media, everybody said it was the greatest trade of all time. There was a clear indication on the tape. Obviously, Denver didn't see it, of him not moving and his inability to make plays, the Russell Cook plays, if you will. So I think the star power, the name power. People ask, why is Bobby Wagner not have a job? Well, salary is one, and Bobby Wagner isn't the same player that Bobby Wagner once was. He's still a good player, but what fans don't understand is good players still want to get paid great. They don't want to take less money. And I think that's the hardest thing.
With that kind of would some players, like, let me throw some names out there that are still available or on the market, OBJ, Ezekiel Elliott, those are kind of some of those players that fall into what you're saying, or no?
Oh, yeah, I think there's no doubt. I mean, Odell hasn't played in 2 years. You realize Odell scored 35 touchdowns his first 3 years. He's been living off that ever since. He's had nowhere near that production in his career since those first 3 years in New York when he did score those many touchdowns. He scored 5 for the Rams, but he's playing with Cooper Kupp. Had Robert Woods on that team too. So he's a different player than he was. When he was in Cleveland, he struggled. He struggled to separate, he struggled to get open, but people recognize OBJ and, oh my God, we got to get him. And then is he as good as you think? And you're paying him over $4 million a year. I think what fans don't realize either is there's very few number one receivers in the NFL, very few, and these guys that want to get paid like number ones really aren't.
Well, we're lucky enough here in Las Vegas to have one of those with Devontae.
No
And as we
doubt.
focus on the Raiders, a year of change, a year of a new regime, and even just speaking on the offseason, of course, losing Derek Carr, just trading Darren Waller, being active in free agency. I guess what do you make of everything that's transpired as far as the Las Vegas Raiders is concerned?
Well, for full disclosure, my son is the offensive coordinator there. My other son is also on the helps the receivers and coaches on the coaching staff. So obviously, I'm biased, and Josh is a good friend of mine. But I think Raider fans have kind of gotten lost a little bit in their uh, their lack of success. I think they've been to the playoffs 3 times since we went to the Super Bowl in '02. This has not been a team that's been built with the right foundation, whether it's been through when Al was still alive and he passed away, to Hugh Jackson, to Dennis Allen with Reggie McKenzie, and then to John Gruden and Mike Mayock. There's been a lot of not establishing what Al Davis would call the true culture of the Raiders. And I think what Josh is trying to do is bring together a unit of players that love football, that are passionate about the game, that are Rich Gannon type guys. And I think that that's going to take some time to do. They've got a lot of draft picks that aren't on the team anymore. I mean, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming Mike Mayock or John Gruden. It's just a fact. Those guys that they didn't hit. Now, The Raiders have to hit with their picks. They've got to improve the depth of their team. But I do think Jimmy Garoppolo will be an upgrade at quarterback. I think Jimmy Garoppolo will be the leader that Josh McDaniels needs to build the team. Whether McDaniels was here or not, let's just say John Gruden went 2 more years as the coach of the Raiders, and there was going to be a point where they were going to change at that point. I think there's no doubt. Everybody wants to blame Josh for the change. I think the change was coming. Remember, they almost changed for Tom Brady.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's much dispute with that. And, you bring up change, obviously, a change at tight end this season. Darren Waller, a key piece to the team, a longtime Raider, is now no longer a part of that team. And it's been weird, honestly, ever since the extension talk happened, there's always just been these weird, it's just been hectic when it comes to Darren Waller's name and his Raiders tenure. And if there's one thing you can point to, and I know you talked a little bit about it on your podcast, which is one of the main reasons I was like, I need to talk to him and have him on the show. But if there's one thing you can point to, why didn't that work out between Darren and the Raiders and McDaniels?
Well, I don't think it worked out the last two seasons. It hasn't worked out. I mean, Darren's not been able to stay on the field. Look, Darren is a really talented player. There's no denying that. He's uniquely talented, but durability is important and as ability. And I think that, I think he, the drop at Tennessee affected his confidence. I think there's no doubt about that. The hamstring, I was out watching practice when they were practicing against the Patriots, and that hamstring seemed to linger the entire year. So, they redid his deal. I think everybody thought that would make a big difference in his morale and his attitude. That really didn't come to fruition. So, look, sometimes you just have to accept it and move forward. The thing that cracks me up is Raider fans, they got a 3rd-round pick for Darren Waller. He didn't start. He started 17 games over the last 2 years.
Yep.
Right. So Jalen Ramsey, who's clearly a Pro Bowl corner, the Rams got only a 3rd-round pick for him. I'm not sure what the Raider fans expected. I think it's a hell of a deal by Dave Ziegler. For a guy who's had 2 years of injury history, and remember, past performance predicts future achievement. I mean, Waller's a great athlete. He's had a couple good years in his career, but he's not been able to put the Davante Adams years of constant play. You don't have to be a father of one of the coaches on the Raiders to see that. Just look at the statistics.
Yeah, and I mean that perfect example that you just brought up with Ramsey and Waller right there in terms of value and getting that back. And as the season was ending at the end of the regular season for the Raiders, the rumor was that Darren Waller might be traded, Hunter Renfrow might be traded. One half of that rumor has come true. Where we stand right now, do you believe Hunter Renfrow is going to be a member of the Raiders by the time the regular season starts?
Well, I think they just paid him a bonus, so I think that gives him a good chance to be on the team. But look, I think every year is a new year, and every player's got to earn their role within the team. I mean, that's part of the Belichickian program. That's part of what I was brought up in. There's nobody that's just guaranteed to get a starting job. You might be guaranteed to make the team, but you're not guaranteed your role unless you're Tom Brady. But so we'll see, or Davante Adams. So I think he's, with Jimmy Garoppolo, it's going to be interesting to see. I think what Raider fans are going to appreciate about Jimmy is Jimmy's ability to connect to his teammates in an authentic way, and they'll buy into him. I think that's going to be really important.
I think you point to Deebo Samuel, I believe, in their last playoff run or 2 years ago, saying, look at his record, when everyone was really questioning his performance. To your point, I do have to ask you, Raiders still have the 7th pick in the draft. If you were in the front office, would you trade up to get one of these quarterbacks? Do you get a corner? Because in this division, in the AFC in general, you can never have enough cornerbacks. What would you do with that pick?
I would pick somebody that I thought was going to become a team captain on the team. I would pick somebody that I thought was going to represent the imagery of the Raiders under this program for years to come. I think when Josh McDaniels looks back on his time in New England, the Patriots under Belichick, if you look at their draft capital from the time he got there in 1999 until just recently, the highest pick they've ever had was the 6th overall, and they picked Richard Seymour, Hall of Fame player. The Browns picked Gerald Warren before him. So they got the right guy. I think for Josh and Dave Ziegler, it's get the right guy. Forget about what the position is. Obviously, could it be an offensive tackle? That'd be great. Could it be a corner? Great. There's a great pass rusher. Great. I mean, I think the one thing that they have to do is get somebody who embodies what they believe in and can get into that locker room to go along with the guys like Max Crosby, who loves football, who wants to win, Devontae Adams, who loves football, wants to win and do the things it takes to win. I think that's going to be the most critical component.
Michael Lombardi joining us. Of course, you can catch him on the Lombardi line on VSiN, also the GM Shuffle podcast. Two more questions before we get you out of here, and we appreciate the time. Big picture wise, with everybody in the NFL, first week of free agency wrapping up, who is your clear winner making the best moves in your opinion?
Well, I think San Francisco's made two great moves. People are going to laugh at me when I say the second one. The first one was when and I learned this from Al Davis, you build strength on strength. Al Davis used to say all the time, if you have two pitchers in baseball that win 20 games and you don't have hitting, you don't trade the pitcher for a hitter because now you're weak in both areas. The Niners went strength on strength. They added a premier defensive tackle who had 12 and a half sacks from a team they have to compete against and put him on their defensive line, which was already pretty good, which was already filled with, Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw and those guys inside. You put Hargrave in there. And I think Sam Darnold, you see, again, this is names, right? Nobody watches the tape. Sam Darnold played really well for Carolina in the last 7 games of the year. He turned the ball over 3 times, 3 interceptions, made a lot of good throws. They ran the football effectively. I think if Brock Purdy's not going to be able to play, I think Darnold can play. And I think it's Kyle Shanahan's system, they'll do well.
And to wrap it up, one more question on your career. You've been a part of a lot of organizations, a lot of front offices, some great Super Bowl winning, some not so much. I'm a Browns fan. I apologize for your time in Cleveland. Thank you for it, though. But for you, what's the one thing that sticks out of, oh, well, this is why this went good and this is why this didn't? I guess I'm asking, what are some of those traits and the quality that some of your more successful tenures have had?
That's an easy answer. I mean, I wrote about it in Good Eye or Genius. It's called alignment. When we won in Cleveland, we were aligned perfectly from the front office all the way through the coaching staff. There was perfect harmony and alignment. We had that in Cleveland with Belichick, even with Marty Schottenheimer was there. When we at the Raiders, when we won the years we were in alignment, mostly because of Rich Gannon. And then when I went back to New England, thank you, Cleveland. I'm not bitter about Cleveland. I got to go back to New England with Belichick. Jimmy Haslam paid my salary for the most part, and I won 2 more Super Bowls. So I don't have a bad word to say about Cleveland. I wish they would win, but I do see there's no alignment. Whenever you don't have alignment, it's very challenging. And alignment means getting 3 things to work at the same time in harmony. It's not being on the same page. And so I think ultimately that's the key to success. And as Bill Walsh told me in 1984, we're only competing against 8 teams, and that's when there were 28 teams. There's very few teams aligned.
It's very true. Well, I'm glad we were able to align this interview. Thank you so much for the time. We'll catch you on VSiN, and hopefully you become a friend of the show here in the future. Thanks so much, Michael.
Thanks, Adrian. Anytime. Appreciate you, man.
Boom, there it is. Thank you, Michael. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.